Red Road was born under the golden light of the Mandevu Savannah, a small cub among the shadows of giants. His father, Scorro, was a formidable warrior, a lion whose roar could be heard across the plains, echoing authority and dominance. From the very beginning, Red Road carried the weight of this legacy, though he did not yet understand it. In his early days, life was simple. He stayed close to his mother, surrounded by the lionesses and siblings of the Birmingham Pride. The Pride thrived under the rule of his father and uncles, powerful males who kept rival coalitions at bay. There was safety in their numbers, and Red Road learned to play, hunt, and survive within this protective family. But the Savannah is never still, and the winds of change swept through Mandevu. A split emerged within the Pride, subtle at first, like cracks in dry earth. A group of lionesses began to distance themselves, seeking new ground and independence. Red Road's mother was among them. As they drifted away from the Birmingham Pride, Red Road followed, unknowingly stepping into a world far less secure. Without the protection of dominant males, the new Pride was vulnerable. Red Road, still too young to defend his family, watched as the shadows of rival males loomed closer, their scents carried by the evening breeze. The small Pride settled along the red dirt roads that cut through the Savannah, giving rise to the name that would one day be feared, Red Road. Though young, Red Road grew under constant pressure. Every day was a lesson in survival, every night a reminder of the dangers that circled in the dark. His mother and the other lionesses shielded him from threats, but even their strength had limits. The absence of a coalition meant that their future was uncertain, and Red Road began to feel the weight of expectation pressing on his shoulders. As he grew older, whispers of his lineage followed him. He was the son of Scorro, a descendant of the Tanda Impi males, legends of the Mandevu. The blood of warriors coursed through his veins, but blood alone could not keep the rival coalitions away. Red Road knew, even in his youth, that the time would come when he had to stand alone. As Red Road grew, the Savannah around him began to shift. The once distant roars of rival males crept closer with each passing season. The lionesses of his pride grew restless, sensing the inevitable approach of danger. The absence of a dominant male to protect them left their territory exposed, and Red Road, though no longer a cub, was not yet ready to take on the mantle of leadership. His days of carefree play were long behind him. Now every hunt and patrol carried the undercurrent of risk. The lionesses moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the horizon for intruders. Red Road often lingered at the edges of their hunting, parties keenly aware that danger could come at any moment. He was learning the language of the Savannah, the rustle of grass, the distant call of hyenas, the heavy footsteps of something far larger than himself. Hello guys, if you like our stories and haven't subscribed yet, support our work and subscribe to the channel to help us. It was during one of these hunts that the first true test arrived. 3 males appeared at the border of the Pride's territory, their golden eyes fixed on the lionesses. They were young, but united, their bond as a coalition giving them confidence to challenge for the land Red Road called home. The lionesses froze, instinctively gathering the cubs and subadults behind them. Red Road's heart pounded as he watched from the safety of the shadows. He wanted to step forward, to defend his pride as his father would have. But he was outnumbered, and the lionesses, despite their strength, could not withstand a full assault from 3 determined males. That day, the intruders did not attack. They marked the edges of the Pride's territory and left. But their message was clear. They would return. For Red Road, the warning lingered long after the males had disappeared. Over the horizon, the Savannah had spoken, and the time for him to rise was approaching. In the days that followed the encounter with the rival males, Red Road felt the weight of his inexperience pressing down on him. The lionesses continued their hunts, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. Every shadow seemed to carry the threat of the coalition's return, and Red Road began to question whether he could truly defend his pride. When the moment came, at night as the Pride rested beneath the stars, he would sit apart, staring out over the dark plains. The roars of distant males echoed in the distance, reminders that the land was full of challengers waiting for weakness. Red Road's muscles had grown, and his mane was beginning to thicken. but doubt lingered in his mind. Alone, he lacked the strength of a coalition. 3 united males against 1 would surely end in defeat. The lionesses, despite their loyalty to him, could not protect him forever. The cubs played near the lionesses, their youthful energy rippling through the grass, unaware of the weight their protector carried. The battles he had fought, the scars he bore, these were burdens the young ones would come to understand only when their own time arrived. Red Road's mane, now touched with the faintest traces of silver, moved softly in the breeze. Though his body showed the signs of countless seasons, his presence remained unshaken. He was more than a king now. He was the foundation upon which the pride stood. His roars no longer needed to dominate the plains as they once had. His mere existence commanded respect. The pride had grown. His cubs, now young adults, mirrored his strength and confidence. The males sparred beneath the trees, honing the skills that would one day determine their fate. The young females watched the lionesses hunt, learning the art of survival and the delicate balance of pride life. Among them, Red Road saw glimpses of himself, the fire of youth, the hunger for dominance, the drive to protect. They were his legacy, living and breathing before him. But the Savannah's rhythm never ceased, and Red Road knew the day would come when his offspring would face the same trials he had endured. The land would call to them, just as it had called to him, demanding strength, courage, and sacrifice. His time as king would not last forever, but that truth no longer weighed heavily on him. For Red Road, legacy was not about holding power indefinitely. It was about ensuring that the pride endured, that the land he had fought for remained in the hands of those who carried his blood. The young males would soon venture beyond the borders of the pride, searching for their own path, while the females would remain, nurturing the next generation beneath the protective gaze of the pride's lionesses. One evening, as the pride rested beneath the marula trees, Red Road lay quietly beside them, his large frame partially hidden by the tall grass. A young cub approached him cautiously, swatting playfully at his tail. Red Road lifted his head, gazing down at the cub with eyes that held stories of battles fought and won. With a soft rumble, he allowed the cub to climb onto his back, the weight barely noticeable. In that moment, the endless cycle of the savannah felt less like a burden and more like a gift. Red Road had not only survived, he had flourished, and so had his pride. As the stars emerged overhead, Red Road closed his eyes, the soft hum of the pride surrounding him. His legacy would echo across the plains long after his final roar had faded into the distance. Red Road was not just a lion. He was a legend, a guardian, and a father to the Mandevu Savannah. And as long as his blood ran through the pride, his story would never truly end. Hello guys. If you like our stories and haven't subscribed yet, support our work and subscribe to the channel to help us. He watched as they cared for the cubs, silently reminding him of the consequences if he failed. The survival of his bloodline depended on his ability to defend the pride. But Red Road felt the isolation of his role more than ever. There were moments when the thought of leaving crossed his mind. The savannah was vast. He could disappear, travel far from this land and start anew. But something held him back. The echoes of his father's presence in the land, the unspoken bond with the lionesses, and the cubs that looked to him for protection anchored him to this place. Still, the question remained. Was he ready to face the inevitable alone? As the days stretched on, Red Road found himself drawn to the edges of the pride's territory, following the faint traces of memories that lingered in the land. This was where his father, Scorro, had once roamed, a ghost in the tall grass whose lessons remained etched in the soil. Though Scorro had long since passed, his legacy cast a long shadow over Red Road's life. On one such patrol, Red Road paused beneath the twisted branches of an ancient marula tree, a place where Scorro had often rested. The scent had long faded, but the stories remained. Red Road closed his eyes and imagined his father standing tall and unshaken, a force that had shaped the pride through battles won and enemies driven away. The stories of Scorro, passed down through the lionesses, spoke of a lion who had once been outnumbered but never outmatched. Scorro had faced his own trials, rising from the uncertainty of youth to become a dominant force across the Manuleti. Red Road realized that his father, too, had once been a young lion facing the impossible. In that quiet moment, something shifted within Red Road. His doubts, while still present, began to fade beneath the weight of his lineage. He was not merely a lion standing alone. He was the continuation of a bloodline shaped by survival and strength. When Red Road returned to the Pride that evening, his steps were heavier with purpose. The echoes of Scorro's strength now walked beside him, unseen but deeply felt. The sun hung low over the Manuleti plains when the inevitable moment arrived. Red Road stood at the northern edge of his pride's territory, the dry wind carrying, with it, the unmistakable scent of intruders. The three rival males had returned, their forms materializing from the tall grass like shadows given shape. This time, there was no hesitation in their approach. The lionesses of the pride gathered behind Red Road, their bodies tense and their eyes fixed on the advancing threat. The cubs, sensing the unease, huddled closer to their mothers. Red Road's heart pounded, but he did not move. The memories of his father, the weight of his lineage, and the bond he shared with the pride rooted him to the spot. He had no coalition there to stand beside him, but the land beneath his paws was his, and he would not yield it. The lead male of the rival coalition stepped forward, his mane catching the fading light. He let out a low growl, a challenge issued directly to Red Road. For a brief moment, silence hung over the savannah, broken only by the rustling of dry grass. Then, with a burst of power, Red Road lunged forward. The clash was brutal and unforgiving. Red Road drove into the lead male, his claws raking against the intruder's flank. The other two joined the fray, their combined strength threatening to overwhelm him. The lionesses roared, circling to defend the cubs, but the battle belonged to Red Road alone. Despite being outnumbered, Red Road fought with a fury that few had ever witnessed. His body bore the marks of the fight, deep gashes along his shoulders and side, but he refused to fall. With each strike, he forced the coalition back, his roars echoing across the plains like thunder. At last, the rival males withdrew, bloodied and defeated. They disappeared into the distance, leaving Red Road standing victorious but scarred. As the lionesses approached him, their eyes filled with respect, Red Road knew the savannah had spoken. He was no longer a young lion living in the shadow of his father. He was now a king, forged by battle and bound to the land he had defended. In the months that followed his first victory, Red Road's reign over the Naru Pride solidified. The scars left by the battle with the rival coalition served as a testament to his strength, and the lionesses walked with renewed confidence under his protection. But the savannah is relentless, and Red Road quickly learned that one victory does not guarantee peace. The rival males did not return, but new threats emerged from every corner of the territory. Hyenas, emboldened by the absence of a coalition, tested the pride's defenses during nightfall, circling the outskirts in search of weaknesses. Red Road met them head-on, driving them back under the cover of darkness with fierce determination. One evening, while patrolling the edges of his land, Red Road stumbled upon the faint scent of humans. A steel trap lay hidden beneath the grass, a cruel reminder that danger did not always come with claws and teeth. Later that same week, Red Road found himself ensnared in a poacher's trap. The metal teeth bit into his leg, but he fought relentlessly until the mechanism gave way, leaving him limping but alive. The lionesses watched over him as he healed, their quiet presence reinforcing the bond between them. Though he recovered, the ordeal left him more cautious, patrolling his land with even greater vigilance. With each passing season, Red Road faced new challenges, young nomads seeking to carve out territory for themselves. Yet none succeeded. His resilience became legend, whispered among the prides that bordered his kingdom. Though he lacked allies in the form of other males, Red Road found strength in the pride that walked beside him. Together, they thrived. Through each test, he emerged wiser, stronger, and more certain of his place as the undisputed guardian of the Naru Pride. The savannah was quiet on the day Red Road's strength was truly tested. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the dry grass as he patrolled the northern border of his territory. It seemed like any other evening, until the metallic scent of blood and rust drifted through the air. He stepped forward, muscles tense, scanning the land for intruders. In his focus, he failed to notice the hidden trap nestled beneath the grass. The snap of metal broke the silence, and pain shot through his foreleg as the jaws of the poacher's snare clenched tight around him. Red Road roared, thrashing wildly in an attempt to free himself. The trap's chain rattled as he tugged, but it held firm, refusing to release its grip. Hours passed, and as darkness swallowed the plains, exhaustion crept over him. The lionesses lingered nearby, their low growls echoing with concern, but there was nothing they could do to break the steel that bound him. For the first time since taking control of the Pride, Red Road felt the weight of vulnerability. The same land he had fought to protect now seemed poised to claim him. Yet, as dawn broke over the horizon, Red Road's resolve returned. With renewed strength, he pulled with all his might, the muscles in his shoulders straining until the trap finally cracked open, freeing him. Limping but undefeated, Red Road left the snare behind. His wounds would heal, but the lesson remained. No threat, seen or unseen, would keep him from his pride. The Savannah had barely forgotten the echoes of Red Road's battle scars when a new challenge emerged, one that would test not just his strength, but his claim as king of the Naru Pride. Mandevu, one of the Tint Swallow Coalition males, had grown bold. Unlike the younger nomads that often drifted near the borders, Mandevu was seasoned, with a mane thick and dark from years of dominance. He carried himself with the confidence of a lion who had faced death and walked away victorious. It began with subtle incursions. Mandevu would slip into Red Road's territory at night, leaving his scent on scattered trees and marking his presence without direct confrontation. It was a message, a warning that the land Red Road ruled was no longer his alone. Red Road ignored the signs at first, confident in his strength. But Mandevu did not relent. On a warm afternoon, under the gaze of a scorching sun, the challenger crossed the border openly. His presence was not one of quiet invasion this time. It was a declaration of war. Red Road met him on the outskirts of the Pride, his body tense and prepared. The lionesses watched from the distance, circling the cubs, but this was not their fight. The two lions locked eyes, and in the silence of the savannah, they lunged. The battle was unlike any Red Road had faced before. Mandevu was powerful, his strikes carrying the weight of a rival determined to overthrow him. Dust swirled around them as claws and teeth clashed, neither lion willing to surrender ground. Blood matted Red Road's fur, but he fought with the ferocity of a lion defending not just territory, but his legacy. With one final decisive strike, Red Road drove Mandevu back, raking his claws across the rival's face. Mandevu staggered, his roars of defiance fading as he retreated into the grasslands. Though battered and bleeding, Red Road stood tall. His breath was heavy, but his pride remained intact. The land was his, and no rival, no matter how strong, would take it from him. In the months following his victory over Mandevu, Red Road's reign over the Naru Pride flourished. The Pride moved as one beneath his watchful gaze, the lionesses hunting with renewed confidence, and the land pulsing with life under his rule. The lionesses began to give birth, and soon the Pride was filled with the soft calls of cubs nestled in the tall grass. Among them were Red Road's offspring, young and full of promise, their golden coats reflecting the light of dawn. These cubs were the living testament to his strength, the next chapter in the legacy he had fought so fiercely to protect. Red Road was no longer just a warrior or protector. He had become a father, a patient guardian whose role extended beyond defending borders. In the cool shade of marula trees, he could be found resting beside the cubs, his massive frame a shield against the dangers that lurked in the savannah. They climbed over him, nipping at his ears and swatting at his tail, unaware of the battles he had endured to ensure their survival. The Pride thrived, growing to 14 strong, 5 adult lions and 9 sub-adults. Red Road's leadership brought stability, and his presence alone was enough to deter would-be challengers. Though the savannah was still unpredictable, Red Road's greatest reward was not the land he ruled, but the family he had secured. His legacy now stretched beyond himself, embodied in the cubs that would one day carry his name across the Manuleti plains. As the season shifted, Red Road's grip over his territory only tightened. The battles that once defined his rise had given way to an era of calm. His scars faded beneath his thickening mane, but the lessons they carried remained etched in his mind. Each morning, Red Road began his patrol along the borders of the Pride's land. His steps were slower now, more deliberate, yet no less commanding. The distant scent of nomadic males often drifted across the wind, but none dared to cross into his domain. The echoes of his past victories served as silent warnings to those who might challenge him. The Pride followed his rhythm. The lionesses hunted with precision, returning to the Pride lands with prey that sustained not just themselves, but the growing cubs. Red Road would often watch from a distance, intervening only when necessary, allowing the lionesses to lead, but reminding them of his presence when danger threatened. The cubs, now subadults, began to venture further from the Pride, testing their strength and chasing shadows along the tall grass. Red Road observed them closely, recognizing the flickers of youth that once burned in him. They were strong, but the Savannah would test them, just as it had tested him. Despite the growing presence of his offspring, Red Road's role as protector never wavered. His presence lingered at every corner of the Pride's land, ensuring that the foundation he had built would endure long after his reign. As the years wore on, the inevitability of age began to show in Red Road's stride. His once fluid movements carried the weight of time, and the golden plains that had long been his kingdom seemed to stretch further with each patrol. Yet, even as the signs of age settled over him, the fire that had defined his rule had not dimmed. The Savannah, however, had little regard for the passing of time. New coalitions, young and ambitious, began to drift closer to his borders. Their roars echoed at night, growing louder with each passing week, a reminder that the cycle of challenge and dominance would never cease. It was during one such evening, under a sky veiled in stars, that Red Road faced his greatest test in years. A coalition of two males, bold and driven by hunger for land, crossed into the Pride's territory. Their scents arrived before they did, and as Red Road approached the source, he found them near the heart of the Pride's land, standing where only he had dared to tread. The lionesses gathered around the cubs, their eyes flicking toward Red Road as he stepped forward. The younger males watched him with curiosity, sizing him up, as if questioning whether the old king still had the strength to stand his ground. For a brief moment, the Savannah fell silent. Then Red Road moved, not with the reckless charge of youth, but with the precision of a lion who had faced death and survived. The fight was brutal and swift. Red Road's experience allowed him to anticipate their strikes, using his strength to counter their advantage in numbers. One male fell back quickly, while the other held longer, his claws tearing into Red Road's shoulder. But the old lion did not yield. A decisive strike sent the second challenger tumbling into the dust, and as they retreated, Red Road remained standing, breathing heavily, but victorious. Blood stained his mane, and his body ached, but as the lionesses approached him with quiet reverence, it became clear that Red Road had once again defied the inevitable. The Savannah was unforgiving, but so was he. The land was still his, and, despite the burdens of age, Red Road's spirit burned as fiercely as the day he first claimed his kingdom. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the Manuleti sky in hues of amber and crimson, Red Road stood atop a gentle rise, his gaze fixed on the pride that thrived beneath his watch.